So back in 2012, I read a newspaper article, a story from El Paso, Texas. It was about a man who was essentially a caveman, just meaning that he lived in a cave in the side of the mountain in a neighborhood in El Paso. Locals described his mountainside subterranean structure, his cave, as being intricate, probably meaning it was furnished and decorated. And so being like in Texas, I just picture that this was taking a man cave to another level, and he had, like San Antonio Spurs posters on the wall in the cave, and, like a signed jersey from David Robinson. And so the local news said, quote, he might be on land owned by the local water utility, which, pending an investigation, could evict him. So according to the coverage by El Paso's KVIA TV, this man roamed around this neighborhood randomly, and he had resisted any efforts to kind of bring him back onto the grid. Now, he was still functional and articulate. It wasn't like, some other level where you couldn't communicate with him or speak to him. But neighbors were afraid of this guy. Some of the neighbors were. Not all, but some were. They were afraid of this guy. They said allegedly he went swimming in some of their swimming pools. That makes me laugh. Who knows if he really did? He even swiped some of their laundry from their laundry rooms. Some said, allegedly. And so swipe or no swiping. But the man was functional and articulate. So he swore he was harmless. He was like, I'm totally harmless. He said, quote, I'm a plasma donor, drug-free, sin-free, baptized and saved. Okay, so that's him saying, like, you have nothing to worry about with me. Like, I'm good. There's nothing to be scared of. So basically, this dude was like the Boo Radley of his neighborhood, for those of you familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird. But let me poll the crowd real quick. Just based on the limited info that we have, how many of you lean toward, get this guy out of the neighborhood? This is just weird. How many of you lean toward that? Give me some applause. Okay? Okay, yeah, very few. All right. How many of you lean more toward, he's fine, leave him alone, let him cook? How many? Okay, all right, sweet. Oh, that's most of you. Okay, so there was one detail, I did forget to mention. Sometimes when he roams the neighborhood, he's naked. Just every once in a while, he just switches it up. Like, is this a closed day or a no closed day? Commando? No clothes at all? So now, does that change your vote? Probably, yeah. Okay, so now we're all with Ashley. Ashley was like the only one brave enough to be like, nah, let's call the popo on this guy. If he's swimming in my swimming pool, he's outie like a belly button, okay? So yeah, in summary, he lived in a cave. Some people are afraid of him, and he's walking around public with his Gentiles exposed, all right? So it's just like, okay. So go to Mark chapter 5. As you just heard, we had the whole scripture read. For those just picking up in the YouTube sermon, we've already read through Mark 5, 1 through 20. So very similar story. The last couple of years, we've been going intermittently through the Gospel of Mark, which is the oldest of the eyewitness gospel accounts that we still have. So here, we have the historical Jesus, who he really was, the real Jesus. And basically, we're building a biography of Jesus. Not so much what he taught, but what he did, the events of his life. So right now we're in a series, as we chunk through, a grouping of the power miracles of Jesus. This is, things that he did. So we're calling this Jesus versus, like Jesus versus an opponent. So last week, Jesus, we saw, has power over the natural. This week, we see Jesus has power over the supernatural. This is Jesus versus evil. So Mark chapter 5, we are now in chapter 5. We've already read this entire passage this morning, but I will be pointing out verses and details. So you might want to get a paperback Bible from the chair in front of you, or bust out your free Bible app and just watch, because I'm going to refer to verses, and you're probably going to be like, ooh, I want to see, does it really say that kind of stuff. So the story of the Gerasene demoniac. This is one of my favorite stories in the Gospels, maybe my favorite story in the four Gospel accounts of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We call him the Gerasene demoniac because he was from the region called the Gerasenes. That's in verse 1. That's where he lived at this time. He was also a demoniac, which basically just means someone possessed by an evil spirit. That's in verse 2. And he lived among the tombs. Well, in that day, tombs were caves built into, like not built into, but they were in the side of a hill. And so he's basically living among the caves in the side of this hill right along the Sea of Galilee. A lot of parallels to this dude in El Paso. So nowadays when someone reads this scripture, this story, or a story like this, a lot of times skeptics today who are skeptical of the spiritual will say, yeah, well, back then people didn't understand neurological disorders, so back then, if something like epilepsy, if someone had a seizure, then ancient people thought it was demonic possession. Or maybe it was some type of mental illness, and they misunderstood it to be demonic possession. And so a lot of times people will say or conclude the gospel writers, even Jesus himself, they were men of their time. This is all that they knew, all that they had, so they attributed everything to demons and devils. This is a very pre-scientific worldview. But when you go to Matthew chapter 4, verse 24, there's a verse there that explodes that entire idea. It says, people brought to Jesus all who were ill with various diseases. And then it gives a list. And it says, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. This is pretty key because basically we're seeing that, okay, there's demon-possessed, there's paralytics, there's epileptics, people who have a neurological disorder, that causes random recurring seizures. The Greek word there actually also refers sometimes to mental illness of different types, madness. So it's interesting because Matthew and the other gospel writers, Mark, Luke, and John, and Jesus understood that there's demon possession and there's seizures that have nothing to do with demon possession. They get that, okay? There was demon possession and there was mental illness or madness that had nothing to do with demon possession. Or let me put it this way. There was paralysis, there was madness, there was disease that had a demonic cause, and then there were those that did not. And so that's really key right here. So in Mark 5, what I want to learn, man, I love this story because you can dig into it if you choose to, let's just say once a year, and say, I'm going to mine this story. And you will constantly, if you continue to unfold the text and just spend time with it, you learn more and more about evil. You learn more and more about Jesus. So here, one of the things that we learn about how evil operates, the nature of evil, if you will, is the more power that evil gives you, the more it takes away. Okay, that's one thing here. Evil seems to give you strength and power, but at the same time, it steals it away from you. So look at verse 3 and 4. He had often been chained hand and foot, and he tore the chains apart and broke the irons with his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. This dude is hawking out, man. Okay, he's got like supervillain strength here. In other words, he had supernatural strength and power, but on the other hand, he cried out at night and he cut himself with stones. He's miserable. He's weak. And so the stronger he got, the weaker he got. The stronger he got, the more he hated himself and his life, and he cuts himself. This is the way that evil always works. I don't know if you've ever seen any old movies or heard any folk tales where part of the plot line is that the devil makes a deal with someone. And part of the deal is always, I will give you fame, I will give you riches, I will give you her, I will give you whatever you want. But when he gives you this strength, this power, whatever it is, position, whatever it is he gives you, success, talent, through it, he enslaves you. And that's always the way in the old movies it works with how the devil makes a deal with someone. That's what this guy's got, increasing strength, but decreasing strength. I'm giving you strength with one hand, and I'm stealing away twice as much with the other. That's how evil works. So if you get this thing that is your Jesus in place of Jesus, and you're chasing it, say professional success, you find that you're really cutting yourself, you're harming yourself, because underneath there's this anxiety, there's this fear, there's this drivenness. That's what this is saying. And so evil gives you power, increasing in the areas that don't count and weakness increasing in the areas that do. Okay? I'm really getting power and strength in areas that when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter in the end. But he's taking away strength and power in the areas that do, spiritually. And my will to fight, my will to live, and be connected to God. So the idea here in this story is, man, I can break the chains, but I don't have any significant relationships left, and I'm tormented by evil. See, it's like I got strength, but not in the areas that matter. Or I'm killing it at work, man, I'm killing it, but I'm relationally isolated and I'm spiritually lost. This is how evil operates. Another example is, sometimes you might say, man, when I vent my anger in a fit of unrestrained yelling or swearing, and I just finally get to the point where, I've gone over the edge, I got to cuss everybody out in the house, whatever it is, or I start punching objects or people, it makes me feel so powerful in that moment. Like I needed that. It made me feel better. But typically, you're losing strength and control and the ability for self-control. Like that's where it really matters. Like in this moment, I feel powerful because I'm doing this, but really I'm being robbed of my self-control by giving into that so that I can feel the sense of power. I heard years ago when I was like early 20s, I heard someone reference the idea of pornography not being about sex and pleasure as much as it's about control and power. And I was like, I don't get that. I remember at like 23, 24, I don't understand that. And over the years, I've heard more Christian counselors and therapists say that and read up on it. But basically the idea that pornography isn't about sex, it's about power. So ever since the fall in Genesis chapter 3, that's the humans sinning and rebelling against God, men and women have basically attempted to control and exert power and dominion over one another. So we diminish each other in order to compensate for the way that our own selfishness and sinfulness has broken us. And we see the results of the curses given in Genesis 3 for rebellion against God. So generally speaking, the way this pans out is most men fear work-related hardship and futility, thinking, I am not enough. Okay, that's a lot of men. That's what they fear, just I'm not enough. Most women fear loneliness and relational strife, thinking, I am too much for other people. And so, pornography is driven by a man's struggle to cope with his loss of that power and control, his feelings of inadequacy that come from our sin. And so the evil of porn is that it promises to restore his sense of adequacy and virility. So men who are struggling with pornography will often go to say, I'm going to contextualize this in a Christian counselor, and they'll go to a Christian counselor with two basic fears. One is that pornography is threatening to take over their lives if it already hasn't. And the other fear they show up with is that they are going to be shamed for their character and basically just told, do better, resist your urges. And so, like, what's the deeper meaning behind this? Like, why is this the thing I'm going to cope? And so, just the idea is that porn gives you an illusion of control and power when really it is robbing you of power. It is making you weaker in the areas that matter spiritually. It's destroying you. That's what evil does. It's consuming you. It's taking over your life, your energy, your time, maybe even your money. And so you receive this illusion of power, but you're really growing weaker, and it's taking over. You're actually cutting yourself spiritually underneath it all, harming yourself spiritually. And these examples are why Jesus called Satan a thief. John chapter 10, verse 10, he calls him a thief. He says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Here's what I have for you, robbing twice as much with the other hand. So evil seems to give you strength and power, but at the same time steals it away. Another thing we see in the story is that evil grows. Okay, like we kind of like take that for granted. Yeah, evil grows, but evil progressively gets worse. Not only was this man physically strong, but he's growing stronger. And that's like, that's kind of the evil here, is that Mark 5:3, the man lived in the tombs and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. In other words, he's growing in this supernatural strength, growing in power, but he cries out all night and he cuts himself with stones. Notice the word here that's scary to me, anymore. Like that says there's been some kind of progression reading through the lines. Anyway, that scares me, that word anymore. That's a really creepy word. Like it was gradual, it grew, it moved forward. In fact, in Luke chapter 11, Jesus has a teaching that you can kind of call a parable because he uses metaphors in it, like where a person is a house, basically a haunted house. And so there's an evil spirit in this person, but there comes a time eventually where the evil spirit's kicked out, but then it goes and gets 7 of his buddies and comes back to a house that still isn't filled with anything, a.k.a. the Holy Spirit. And he brings 7 buddies with him, and it says, well, then the condition is worse off than it was at first. So it grows. The evil inside of that person grows. So this little word anymore, man, it tells me a lot. Like the more power I get through serving something other than Jesus, just the less joy I have, the more I am being robbed. It's like evil vacuums out your joy. Have you ever just like looked inside your car and you're like, oh my gosh, just crumbs everywhere. And like if you got some little kids, there's just like Cheerios everywhere. Some of them became liquid, then solid. I mean, like it's stuff everywhere, just a layer of stuff. And then you're eventually like, okay. That's what evil does to your joy. It just vacuums it out, man. It just takes it away. And some people smarter than me who try to understand what is hell, because what we know of hell, there's several things from scriptures, but the big factor to hell is that it's the absence of, it's separation from God. There's no hope. No, there's no deliverance. There's no, like, you get what you want. I've held God at arm's length all my life. But now God grants to you, okay, if you want distance, I will give you distance. And it's an eternity of that. But people much smarter than me, like C.S. Lewis and others, who have tried to conceptualize what hell is, one of the theories, it's a place where God just lets you continue to do what you want to do in your selfishness. Not party and enjoy pleasure. No. It's not that. It's you just continue to become more and more selfish, growing in your selfishness, and he lets it go on forever without hope. Have you ever seen someone who has become so selfish that they're just tormented? This was my stepdad, Joe. Like, at the end of Joe's life, when he died, I was just like, man, I'm not mad at him. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I could be, but my natural response to Joe was just like I pitied him. He was so lonely and isolated because of how disgusting and selfish and perverted. And just like, man, what a tormented. And I just picture now separated from God in eternity, which I am not happy about for Joe. How is that increasing and getting worse in his separation from God? It's heartbreaking, but that's what evil does. It grows and it grows and it grows. And then look at verse 9. One more thing about the nature of evil. Verse 9, evil splits you. Like, Jesus asked this tormented dude, what is your name? And the response is, my name is Legion, he replied, for we are many. Like, whoa, that's creepy. Like, through this whole encounter, it says in some places, the man said, and then in other places, the demon said. Like, whoa, coming from, now that's not new to us because Hollywood's made money off that for decades, right? You know, it's like, hi, I'm Reagan. Oh, I am the devil, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, if you remember The Exorcist, I actually just read the book because I heard the novel was really good, and there's stuff in the novel that, of course, isn't in the book. So I read it within the last year, but I think this is also in the movie version. But if you remember it, it's this Catholic priest talking to this little girl, and the little girl at one point says, I'm not Reagan. And Father Karras says, well, then let's introduce ourselves. I'm Damien Karras. And the little girl says, I'm the devil. Now kindly undo these straps. And so just constantly you're like, who am I getting at what moment? Another point, Father Karras says, where is Reagan? And the demon says, I'm here, in here, with us. And so you're like, ooh, I never know who's going to be talking. Now in Hollywood, all they do is give it the creepy voice, and you know who you're talking to. Like, oh, mommy, help me. And then I'm the devil, and I'll puke pea soup on you. You know, that kind of thing. And so, but if you serve any master other than Jesus, you'll find that you'll be split into pieces, into cells like this. There will always be a self that says, if there's any amount of evil in you, aside from Jesus, you don't have Jesus. And so evil has some reign in your life. Whether you think it's large or small, that's the only other option. You serve Jesus or the devil has you. And so there's always a sense I can do things on my own. Now, I'm not made to do things God's way. I wasn't made for that. You know, evil within you will speak and say stubbornly, I wasn't made for monogamy. I wasn't made for community. I wasn't made for accountability, all things God says you're made for. Or I wasn't made for self-control. I'm one of those people that doesn't have a filter. No, you know what that's called? That's called immaturity. Okay? Yeah, it's just called I don't want to have a filter. I don't want to have self-control. And so maturity is called self-control. And so, you know, there's this evil inside you that speaks with that voice, like that's not what I was made for, what God says you were made for. And so that's the evil within you. But then those same people, maybe maybe this is striking a chord, is like the same people will say things like, man, I got to be honest, I'm a big softie for kids. I'd do anything. I'd steal a car for a kid, you know? Like, whoa, out of the same mouth that this demon speaks, they love kids though? Yeah, that's not crazy. That's not inconsistent. It's the splitting. Like I can be completely evil, but also still reflect things that are in the image of God. Like, oh man, you know, you need help moving, I'll be there. Like the most evil person you know, they're cheating on their spouse or whatever, but you need help moving, you need something fixed? Oh, I come help you fix that. Or what a heart of graciousness in the same person. Oh, I hear you guys do this thing called holiday dollars, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Man, how can I donate to that? What? This is the most foul person in my workplace, and they found out about holiday dollars, and they want to give some money. That's what evil does, man. Evil splits you from within. And so people filled with a lot of evil can still have these ways that they want to reflect the goodness of God and the image of God that they're made. How's that possible? Evil splits you. I love, with all my heart, my brother Charlie. Some of you know Charlie because he came to Momentum for several months while he lived with us. For 10 months, going into like the 2020 pandemic, that hit while he was living with us. But my brother Charlie's an alcoholic. And he essentially, before some events that played out in like 2020 or 2018 maybe, he had basically been drunk since college. You know, he started partying in college and just was pretty much drunk ever since then. And there's always these things of like, man, something's up with Charlie, something's up with Charlie, something's up with Charlie. And it just continued to grow. And eventually he caused an accident while he was under the influence. No one else was hurt. He was badly hurt. And he eventually went to prison for that first-time offense because he wouldn't show up in court, and he kept trying to duck the law. And so he ended up going to prison for 2 years because of that first offense, and he totally deserved it. He was being dumb. And so when I went to visit him in prison, he came out to the waiting room, and this is the first time I've seen my brother dry in years. And he looked like my brother again. And he talked like my brother again. And I hugged him, and we talked for hours, and I laughed with him. And I was like, this is what it's like to have a brother again. And then I left there, got my cell phone back, and I texted Shannon, it's like I have my brother again. Like, I haven't seen that person in so long. He got out of prison, and he came to live with us for 10 months, like I said. And the day he moved out, he relapsed. And he had just gone through a breakup with a girlfriend, and he relapsed. And all I can say is just like anybody who knows an addict or is an addict, the split happened immediately again. Like all of a sudden, there's Charlie, who I've now known for several months and through all the visits. So for a couple years in prison and 10 months with us. And now there's Charlie, who is a liar because he's drinking. He is a jerk. He is stealing from people. He's siphoning off people. You can't trust him. He blames everyone else but himself, me and my mom. I mean, it's just split. They're two different people in the same person, just depending on whether alcohol is present. And now he's off the grid. I haven't heard from my brother in 3.5 years. My mom's heard him a couple times, random drunk calls from numbers she doesn't recognize. Last I talked to my mom, a couple weeks ago, she said he's in a top 10 list of most wanted in Northwest Ohio, that he keeps appearing in printed papers, and he's living in the Tombs somewhere. I have no idea what's up with my brother, But that's the split. The nature of evil is that you are going to harm yourself. You are going to go off the grid. You're going to isolate yourself. And it is going to split you to be different people within the same person. Evil splits you. And so, tough question, because I know it's hard to make this leap from this guy to the question of like this man with the unclean spirits. Is there anything inside of you right now that makes you feel helpless and enslaved by like an alien power? You know, like this is something, it's foreign, I can't control it. You might even say, it's not me. I don't want this. Do you feel that in any kind of way? So how does this man get healed? Step one, he comes running to Jesus. Like, Jesus appears, by the way, from the boat where he's just calmed the storm. He's shown power against nature. He comes off that boat. This is the next episode. He steps onto dry land, and this guy comes running to Jesus. He's attracted to Jesus. He's fascinated by him, the mystery, the love, the power of Jesus. And he sees Jesus for who he is, unlike the Pharisees, the religious people that time, unlike many of the crowds Jesus has spoken to. This dude sees Jesus for who he is. So he comes to meet Jesus. He doesn't walk. The text says he ran to Jesus. He falls on his knees, which is a posture of submission and worship. And the troubled man says, "What do you want with me? Don't torture me." I've been in a lot of churches and a lot of small groups too. At Momentum, we call them Mo groups. My Mo group, through the years changes. People go start a new Mo group. We multiply for whatever reason. I'll be in different groups of people. And one of the things that I've seen a lot in different churches and in different Mo groups is people who say, I don't believe in Jesus. I want to stay in control of certain parts of my life, usually my bitterness, my money, and my sex life, right? Everybody's like, yes, amen. Yep. I want my sex, I want my money, and I want to be pissed. Okay? So they say, I'm not following Jesus, but I'm attracted to him. There's something about him. There's this pull to him that I cannot explain. That's the beginning. It is all about, can you submit the big things, whatever they are, your anger, your sex, your money. And so John Solomon is a friend of ours who came to our small group when Shannon and I, my wife, led a small group for young adults in the D.C. area. And he came and he said, he was a seeker. He was investigating Jesus. But he told us after we knew him for a few months once, he goes, I've gone to just about every type of small group you can imagine for every type of religion. You name it. My mom took me to all these different small groups from different religions. So picture this. There are Mo groups for Buddhists. Like he's like, I've gone to them. There's Mo groups for Hindus. Last service, I accidentally said there are Ho groups for Muslims. No, they're not. They are against sexual immorality. There's not Ho groups for... So he was like, but I've been to them all. He said, my mom took me around to all of them, and now I'm on my own. He was a young guy. He's about 30. He's a chiropractor, young professional. He said, but there's something about Jesus. That's why I'm here. There's something about Jesus. And so there's the sense sometimes of people who are like, I just sense that he is the absolute authority, that he was God in the flesh, that he's the most high, like this guy says. And so maybe you're saying, I know we have people at Momentum who know that they're not Christians, and that is something I respect so much. The biggest bunch of poppycock is when someone is far from Jesus, and they're like, oh yeah, I love Jesus because I like those songs on Sunday morning. And I got the T-shirt, And so, it's like, but someone who knows they don't follow Jesus, that you can work with that. Good. Why don't you follow Jesus? Good, we can have a healthy conversation instead of your denial that you believe you follow Jesus when heck's to the no. You weren't following Jesus. So maybe you're saying, man, I don't want this. My family won't like it if I do it. My friends will make fun of me. I'm scared to death. I don't want this, but you keep coming. There's just this attraction to Jesus that a lot of times that kind of person is honestly what makes momentum. That Christians get to interact with you, and you get to interact with Christians and learn from one another. So that's so much further along than people who just keep coming because it's routine, because that's what their mom taught them. It's ho-hum, I believe, but there's no reason to get fanatical about it. There's no reason to really start investing in this thing spiritually. And I remember, kids in my youth group in high school that were that way. They're just like, yeah, once they're out of the house, this isn't going to go well. It was sad, but it's like, that stinks. Like they've never made their faith their own. And it's just ho-hum. But to actually be attracted to Jesus and know you're not following him, man, that's huge. And to be able to say, what is keeping me from following him? And so this tormented man says to Jesus, don't hurt me. Isn't that interesting? That is what evil always does. That's what the devil wants to tell you. The devil will let you see the power of Jesus, the holiness of Jesus, the sovereignty of Jesus. He does not want you to see the mercy of Jesus. He doesn't want you to see the grace of Jesus. He wants you to believe if you go to Jesus, he will destroy you. If you turn to Jesus, submit to him fully, he will destroy you. Like in verse 7 through 9, Jesus said, this is the order. You have to kind of reorder it the way the story is told. But Jesus said, come out of this man, you impure spirit. And then the man says, in God's name, don't torture me. Then, notice the exorcism doesn't happen. Jesus has already said, come out. And he says, please don't torture me. And the exorcism hasn't happened yet. So next, Jesus asks him, what is your name? Okay, so this is Jesus versus evil. And so maybe you're looking here like, wait a minute, is this demon so powerful? Is this evil so powerful that he's actually putting up a fight against Jesus? I don't think that's what's happening here. What I think is happening here is that Jesus pauses the exorcism. I don't think he'd stop for a demon's sake. I think he slows it down for the man's sake. And I wonder if it's a small way to kind of reassure this man, no matter what the devil has been telling you, I am merciful. It's almost like a doctor before you go into surgery saying, it is going to be okay. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. This is going to be fine. Hold your hand. When you wake up, things are going to be different. So the point is, Jesus, I think, pauses the exorcism. He slows it down for the sake of the man because the man believed what the demons have been telling him for a long time now. If you give yourself utterly to Jesus, he will destroy you. You won't have a happy life. You'll miss out on so much. You can't be holy and happy. That's what I think the demon's been telling him. Jesus is like, I'm going to slow this down for the sake of this person. And so, the idea that you can't be holy and happy, Jesus is trying to destroy you. That's the first lie of Satan. Genesis chapter 3, go back there again. Satan, the devil, tells Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, if you obey, if you refuse to eat from that one forbidden tree, you'll miss out. God doesn't want you to have ... And that's the first lie. And so this is the lie constantly that we hear from Satan. The devil's always telling us, okay, man, you only get high school once. Don't waste high school going to a student ministry and spending time with God by yourself when you could be out doing things. Don't waste your time serving other people in the name of Jesus. You only get high school once. Don't miss out. Middle school and high school, the devil will virgin shame you. Like, are you kidding me? You only get high school once. That's what kids do. They have sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Like kids have sex on dates or after they go to prom. Like, you will miss out. Jesus is trying to destroy your life. Or in college, when you get away from your parents. This is when people try new stuff. This is the point. Like, parents aren't hovering now. Try new stuff. People party in college. If you haven't tried liquor, try liquor. If you haven't smoked weed, smoke weed. Go to some clubs. Hook up with someone you don't know very well. Experiment with someone of the same sex. Try it. If you don't, you're missing out. It's the first lie. The devil says you can't be happy and holy. And so over and over, for adults, Jesus is going to torment you. Adults, you'll never satisfy God. He'll never be happy with your life following Jesus. You're always going to have to say no to everything. You won't get married unless you take things in your own hands and find a person that you like. Who gives a crap what God's standards are? That you are missing out. There's only so many people out there for you. I mean, it'll go on and on and on. You can't be happy and holy. You got to take things into your own hands. Jesus wants to torment you. He's going to destroy you. And that is the lie of Satan. And Jesus comes to this man and says, I am not in the tormenting business. I'm about to save you. And so Jesus said, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, But what's the flip of that? Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Like, Satan's saying, I have life. Try. And meanwhile, he's robbing you with the other hand. And Jesus is like, I'm the one who gives actual life. He's carjacking you the whole time. He's stealing from you the whole time. At the end of the story, Jesus says to this guy, after he expels the demons, he says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had what? Mercy on you. The devil will do anything he can to hide grace from your eyes. He doesn't want you to believe that Jesus will be merciful to you with all that you've done, with all that you've been through, with all the names you've called yourself. And he doesn't want you to see it. And that way, if you don't see the mercy of Jesus, your people won't either. Go back to your people and tell them about the mercy of God. And a true encounter with Jesus means I'm going to go back and be like, you guys don't even know where I was. You don't know how I was isolated and split, how it was growing. And yet Jesus showed me mercy. Jesus had mercy on me. So Jesus confronts evil, and here's what happened. Verse 13, I think it's interesting. He gave the demons permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. It's funny because here, before he did an exorcism, like, come out, and it kind of pauses. Now, he doesn't have to tell them to come out anymore. They're begging about where can we go, and he gives them permission to go into the pigs. So it's just a matter of like, okay, we're leaving, but where are we going? You can go into the pigs. And so, what's interesting is there's a female version of this guy in a sense. Her name's Mary Magdalene. And in spite of what anybody tells you, I think Chosen is a great show, but it incorporates a lot of tradition that people have had about Mary Magdalene. There's no evidence ever that she was a prostitute, or anything like that. But we do know of Mary Magdalene from Luke chapter 8, verse 2, that she did have 7 demons in her before she met Jesus. And Jesus handled that for her. And that's really interesting because she's kind of a female version of this guy who's like, we are legion, for we are many. And that was her. She had 7 demons packed in her like sardines. And the point is, there comes a point when just people can't help you anymore. Like there's nothing that people can do for you. When it comes to the evil inside of you, it's not going to be the therapy. It's not going to be your fitness instructor, your fitness coach. It's not. Nobody's going to be able to help. Only Jesus can help. It's Jesus versus the evil within you. Without Jesus, we are all headed toward anymore. Like it's just grown so much. People can't help anymore. They can't even bind him anymore. The implication is this guy is not in a different category than you or me. He's just further along in the continuum. Like aside from Jesus, we're all just on this continuum with evil reigning in our lives, and it may be looking more and more drastic. And so this guy's just further along the spectrum than we are, but we're all on the same road without Jesus. Jesus is the only one that can handle the evil in your life. He is the only one who has supernatural authority over the supernatural. Here's how I'll end. Very simple. Don't be afraid to give yourself to Jesus totally. He is merciful. He's not going to destroy you. He's going to give you full joy. You can be happy and holy, just meaning cleansed by God. And in fact, we're about to do something that speaks right into the face of the belief that Jesus is not full of mercy. We're about to take communion. The bread represents his body broken for us. The juice represents his blood poured out for us because he wanted to show us mercy. He gave his life for us and said, I know you've made a lot of mistakes. You are tormented. You are living in your own selfishness. But I love you so much that I see my naked kid running around those tombs, and all I want to do is help. All I want to do is give my life for you. And so we take communion, the symbolism showing that we are wrong if we think Jesus wants to destroy us and won't be merciful. He is so merciful. Let's pray.